How rare is your body? How rare is your body? Let's find out. 83.7% of people can roll their tongue, but only 14.7% of people can make a clover out of their tongue. Only 4% of people have an outie belly button. And believe it or not, doctors can't choose if you have an innie or an outie belly button. Things like the belly button itself and the fat beneath it determine what kind of belly button you'll have. 10% of people have something called Morton's toe. And this is where your big toe is shorter than the toe next to it. The Statue of Liberty actually has a Morton's toe as well. 1% of people have a double row of eyelashes. And while this might look like something a lot of you are jealous of, it actually can cause a lot of problems. Next, 2% of people naturally have red hair. In order to have a child with this hair color, both parents need to possess the gene. And while redheads make up a tiny part of the population, one study found that 30% of ads have red hair in them. How rare you are? Part 2. Only 2% of people naturally have blonde hair. And if you narrow it down just to white people in the United States, that percentage goes up to 5%. Less than 1% of people have this small little hole right on their ear. Some evolutionary biologists claim this used to be a gill on humans. 35% of people have no wisdom teeth. Wisdom teeth used to serve a purpose, but they no longer serve a purpose in us, which is why we take them out a lot of times so they don't get infected when they're pushing through your gums. And if you don't have wisdom teeth, I'm jealous of you. 20% of people are double jointed. This is thought to be genetic and due to a variation in collagen in your connective tissues. Less than 1% of the people in the US have AB negative blood. And believe it or not, there's something called golden blood, which only about 40 people in the world have, and it's completely different than any other blood. How rare you are? Part 3. Number 1 is dimples. Only 25% of people have dimples. You can have either 2 or just 1 cheek dimple. Dimples are also hereditary, so if either of your parents has a dimple, it's more likely that you will have one as well. Number 2 is the way your hair whirls. 8.4% of people have a counterclockwise hair whirl on their head, while the majority has a clockwise one. Only 5% of people have arched fingerprints. And you can see 65% have looped and 30% have whirled, but that arched is the rarest. Only 22% of people can wiggle one ear, and only 18% of people can wiggle both their ears. And the ability to wiggle the ears may be inherited, however, it can also be learned with practice. Only 11% of people have naturally curly hair. How rare is your body? Part 4. 10% of people are left-handed, and people who are left-handed tend to live shorter lives. Only about 1% of people are ambidextrous, and this is a person who has no preference for the use of right or left hands. Only 1.5% of people have a single palm crease. This is oftentimes found in males and is a hereditary trait. Less than 1% of people have an extra rib. Most people have 12 pairs of ribs or 24 ribs, but there's a chance that people can be born with 25 ribs, and it's called a cervical rib. 3% of people have X's on both their palms. This is a very rare phenomenon that only 3% of people have, and some people regard it as a sign of a strong character. How rare is your body? Part 5. 24% of people can raise one eyebrow, however, you can also learn to do this as well. 14% of people do not have this muscle you see called the palmaris longus. This was developed when our ancestors were big tree climbers, and if you want to see if you still have it, pull back your palm on a flat surface, touch your pinky and thumb together, and slightly lift them, and you should see that ligament pop out. Only 35% of people can gleek, and only 1% of people can do it on command, and this is where you're spitting saliva from under your tongue and it kind of squirts out. Only 35% of people have 20/20 vision, and this means that 2 out of 3 people cannot see perfectly. Less than 1% of people have their heart on the right side of their body, and surprisingly, this doesn't normally come with any negative consequences. How rare is your body? Part 6. 10% of adults in the US have never had a cavity in their life. However, it's estimated that 1 in 4 adults have cavities that are untreated. Only 1% of people clasp their hands this way. So clasp your fingers together and see what the position of your thumbs do. 50% hold the right thumb above the left one, 49% do it the other way around, and only 1% place the thumb next to each other. Only 12% of people have something called tetrachromacy, which is where they can see a lot more colors than the majority of people. They can see about 10 times as many shades and colors as someone with normal vision. Only 12% of people dream in black and white. The majority of people dream in color. 43% of people are bilingual and can speak more than one language fluently. How rare is your body? Let's find out. 30% of people can flare their nostrils on command. Believe it or not, everyone can flare their nostrils. We do it subconsciously all the time. However, that muscle is very little used and is usually weak, so a lot of people can't do it on command. Only 10% of people have a birthmark like this. These birthmarks are usually oval in shape and come in a coffee type color, and in French, it translates to coffee with milk. Only 10% of people can touch their nose to their tongue. In medicine, this is called the Gorlin sign, and only about 10% of people can actually do this. And no, pushing your tongue up to your nose doesn't count. Only 25% of people have perfect teeth and never need braces or any orthodontics. Only 45% of kids need braces, but 75% need orthodontic care for some unknown reason. How rare is your body? Let's find out. 20% of people have a gap between their two front teeth. What normally causes this is a discrepancy between the jaw size and the teeth. Now, a lot of celebrities also have this and don't get it corrected because they think it makes them unique. 25% of people have something called hitchhiker's thumb. Hitchhiker's thumb is where the upper part of the thumb can bend 90 degrees backwards. And there's also a gene referred to as the bendy thumb gene that causes this. Only 10% of people have something called Darwin's tubercle. This is the little bump on the outside of your ear, and it's believed that people who have this are better at sensing voice tonality. Only 1% of the population can lick their elbow. And the people that can normally do this usually either have a long tongue or a short forearm or both. How rare is your body? Let's find out. Less than 50% of people can wiggle their toes individually. The big toe and the little toe have individual muscles, so those are easier to move individually, but your middle toes are all controlled by one set of muscles, so those are a lot more difficult to move individually. Less than 0.01% of people have an unusual pupil shape. This can range from things like the pupil looking like it's dripping to different shapes and different ways the pupil is actually structured. About 1% of people need less sleep than the rest of us. The people that are able to do this have something called sleeper syndrome, which allows them to go through a sleep cycle faster than the average person. Less than 1% of people have unbreakable bones. This is caused by a mutation in one of the genes that causes the bones to be up to 8 times denser and nearly impossible to break. How rare is your body? Let's find out. Less than 1% of people can give themselves goosebumps on command. The majority of people get goosebumps when they're cold or when they're listening to music. However, 1% of people can give themselves goosebumps whenever they want to. 7% of people can tickle themselves. Usually your brain does not let you tickle yourself, but some experts believe that if you push your tongue up against the roof of your mouth, you can actually tickle yourself because you're not used to that sensation. 42% of women in the US can burp on command. And a fun fact for you about burping is chickens cannot actually burp. The majority of people cannot fit their fist in their mouth. The majority of people that can do this must have a big mouth and have a small fist to make this work. Less than 1% of people can hear colors or see sounds. This is when someone hears a sound and automatically sees a color, or read a word in a specific color enters their mind immediately. How rare is your body? Let's find out. Only 26% of people have a narrator inside their head. So you know that little voice in your head when you're talking, it talks out loud to you? Well, not everyone has that. Some people picture it more visually and some people don't have that narration at all. So for example, some people might say, okay, I need to buy milk when I go to the store, but some people might visualize themselves actually buying the milk. Only 40% of people can smell the smell of asparagus in their urine. There's a lot of genes and DNA that go into if you're able to actually smell that smell, but only 40% of people were actually able to. The other 60% could not smell it. 25% of people sneeze when they're exposed to direct sunlight. This is when as soon as you're exposed to direct sunlight, you sneeze. So only 25% of people actually have this, and it has its own name. It's called the photic sneeze reflex. How rare is your body? Let's find out. Only 6% of people have a cleft chin. A cleft chin is just a dimple in the middle of your chin, and believe it or not, this is usually genetic, and you can actually add or remove one with surgery. About 12.5% of people have something called varicose veins. These are swollen or twisted veins under the skin that kind of pop out, and these are caused by weakened or damaged vein walls or valves. About 1% of people suffer from excessive sweating. Also known as hyperhidrosis, this is when you suffer from excessive sweating, usually in the armpits, hands, or feet. Only 4% of people have something called Raynaud's syndrome. This is when a part of your body, usually your fingers or toes, start to turn white when you're exposed to low temperatures or the cold. And this happens because the body is overreacting to the low temperatures or to stress. How rare is your body? Let's find out. About 5% of people have amber eyes. Amber is usually golden or coppery with flakes of gold or green or brown in it. Amber eyes are also very common in birds, dogs, and fish as well. 25% of the population snores regularly. On top of the 25% that snore regularly, 45% of people snore occasionally. Only 1% of people have pointy or elf-like ears. This is usually caused by an abnormality called Stahl's ear and is usually corrected early in life. Less than 1% of people can pop their eyeballs out of their socket. This is also called globe luxation, and only a few people are known to be able to do this. Only 0.06% of people have something called partial heterochromia, and this causes the iris to have two separate colors. How rare is your body? Let's find out. Only 5% of people have a double hair whorl. The majority of people only have one hair whorl, and it actually usually goes in the clockwise direction, but having two hair whorls is pretty rare. Less than 0.5% of people have a third nipple. You can see it right here. They can come in a variety of different sizes, but they're usually a little bit smaller and a lot of times look like a mole and are hard to notice. About 4% of people are colorblind. Men are a lot more likely to be colorblind, coming in at 8% of men being colorblind and only about 0.5% of females being colorblind. Less than 1% of people have super stretchy skin. Having super stretchy skin is also known as hyperelasticity, and things like collagen and elastin are what control how stretchy the skin actually is, so people who are able to do this usually have different variations of those. How rare are you? Let's find out. About 20% of people have one pupil that is bigger than the other. This is also called anisocoria, and it's characterized by having two different sized pupils. It can be a very small difference or it can be a big difference. 70% of people bend their head to the right when kissing. And your brain is actually the cause for this. The left side of our face shows more emotion, so we want to give our partner the more emotive side, so we tilt our head to the right. Less than 1% of people have uncombable hair syndrome. This is actually a condition that's characterized by frizzy hair that can't be combed down. This is normally seen in people that are younger and usually have blonde hair. Less than 1% of people have a neck rib. This is also known as a cervical rib and comes out of your 7th vertebrae. How rare is your body? Let's find out. About 5% of people have ears that stick out pretty far, and some people even go as far as getting surgery to have them pinned back so they don't stick out. 8% of people still have chimp-like feet. About 1 in 13 people have feet that are specifically adapted for climbing trees, and this is characterized by a mid-foot arch. If you want to check if you have this, see if you can bend the ball of your foot as well as the region halfway between your heel and the ball of your foot. All of us have a joint here, however, there's normally a ligament that keeps us rigid, however, some people are able to flex it. Less than 1% of people are born with a white patch of hair. This is also called poliosis, and it's due to a lack of pigment called melanin in the hair follicles. And this can go from their hair, this can be their eyebrow, and there's different spots this can appear. About 2% of people have something called vitiligo, which is a disease that causes loss of skin color and blotches. This happens when pigment-producing cells die or stop functioning. How rare is your body? Let's find out. About 5% of people have a cracked tongue. This may be developed at birth or developed in childhood, and the exact cause isn't known. However, it can be associated with things like Down syndrome and malnutrition. About 46% of people have these things called skin tags. They're most common in people who tend to go through hormonal changes like pregnancy, and while they can occur at any age, they seem to be more prevalent in those that are 60 and older. About 80% of people are affected by acne at some point in their life. Acne is most common in teenagers, however, it can happen at any age, and about 20% of those people have severe acne. About 10% of people have something called eczema. This is a condition that can make your skin red and itchy, and it's most common at childhood, but it can happen at any age. As of now, there's no cure, but there are ways to reduce the itching and redness. How rare is your body? Let's find out. First is tying a cherry stem in a knot with your tongue. Only about 14% of people can actually do this. Only about 5% of people have hypermobile hands like this, and some of them can even grab things with the back of their hand. Only about 2.8% of people have ADHD, and ADHD is more prevalent in males usually than females. About 65% of people are lactose intolerant. Most mammals quickly lose their ability to digest lactase after weaning off, but humans' recent evolution has extended lactose tolerance into adulthood. About 5% of people are born with their tongue tied. This is where your tongue is literally tied to the bottom of your mouth, and this can sometimes impact speech and eating, and it's 3 times more common in males than females. How rare is your body? Let's find out. Only 2% of people have naturally green eyes, and the highest concentration of green eyes come from Ireland, Scotland, and Northern Europe. Only 48% of people can burp on command. However, this is a skill that can be learned by swallowing air and learning to control your esophageal sphincter muscle. About 0.3% of people have a sunken-in chest. This is also called pectus excavatum, and it's when your breastbone is sunken into your chest. 6.7% of people suffer from depression, and that's only counting people who have suffered from one major episode in the last year. Only 30% of people have a tattoo, and 36% of people from ages 18 to 34 have a tattoo, while only 16% of people 55 and older have one. How rare is your body? Let's find out. About 1% of people have a cleft chin. Cleft chins are normally genetic and the dimple forms before birth, and it's caused by the two sides of the lower jaw not completely fusing together when you're in fetal development. About 7% of people suffer from social anxiety, and this is when you get anxious or nervous either immediately or even weeks before an event, and it can cause things like shortness of breath, dizziness, diarrhea, out-of-body sensations, and more. About 25% of people have insomnia, and the most common causes for insomnia are stress, irregular sleep schedule, depression, anxiety, and more. About 12% of people have claustrophobia. Claustrophobia is one of the more common phobias, and it appears in women more than men. Only 3.6% of people sleepwalk. And there have been instances of people sleepwalking where they'll drive, go through a normal routine, eat, get dressed, and so on. How rare is your body? Let's find out. About 50% of people can unfocus their eyes on command. This is done by relaxing the ciliary muscles in your eyes, which causes them to lose their focusing power. And normally you don't have to think about if you're focusing or unfocusing, your body and your eyes do it automatically. About 3.1% of people have general anxiety disorder, and women are twice as likely to be affected by it compared to men. About 20% of people pee in public swimming pools, and in the average swimming pool, there's about 8 gallons of urine. And when your eyes turn red from swimming in a public pool, it's not the chlorine. About 25% of people regularly bite their nails, and the most common reasons are boredom, frustration, or if you're heavily concentrating. About 60% of people suffer from nosebleeds, and the most common cause of the nosebleeds is just dry air.